And now we'd like to welcome the Reverend Mark Fowler.
So good morning, everyone. It's so good to be with you. You know, one of the things I'm always mindful of now with speaking via Zoom is that there's so many more people actually that get to attend than might have been able to come all the way out to Southampton with me. So there are a number of people on the call today, and I don't want to miss anybody's name. And now I've got this top bar that I'm managing, but I want to thank all of my friends. But in particular, I want to mention my friend Kathy Borey, who's visiting us from Vancouver. So she got up out of her coffin 3 hours earlier than we are right now. So thank you so much, Kathy, for being with us. And my friend Candace, who's just kind of like always like, give me more time, give me more time. So I was good this time and told everybody what was happening. So Candace, it's always a pleasure to be in fellowship with you. I want to start by just acknowledging that for anyone who is actually still experiencing any kind of connection or result of COVID-19, that my prayer and intention is that in all of its ways, will be well, in whatever ways that Spirit deems that to be. That we are we're in a marathon and not a sprint, and I just encourage us to fortify ourselves and sustain ourselves, because this is part of the transformation that the world has been asking for. So I just ask all of you to pray for me, and I'm praying for you. I also want to, I've started most of my talks lately, both personally and professionally, with a land acknowledgement, recognizing that I'm speaking to you from my home in Brooklyn, in Flatbush, and that this is the ancestral home of the Munsee Lenape people. Those people were displaced and slaughtered and cast aside, and now are a diaspora people. I know that I have not respected this land in acknowledging who it actually comes from. And I want to make sure that I do that in my future work, to acknowledge that this land was not mine, that I've benefited from it, and just ask that the ancestral ancestors would forgive any of my transgressions and would look favorably upon this time that we have together. And I think with this unprecedented time that we're in, which in reflection maybe not as unprecedented as we'd like to think, is a good time for us to pause and notice what our thoughts are about the idea of belief as spiritual people, and engage in an inquiry about what I'm calling the myth of belief, certainty in uncertain times. You know, I start everything with the gospel according to Merriam-Webster. And when I look up the definition of the word belief, there are a number of definitions that I want to share with you. One of them is that it's a state or habit of mind in which trust or confidence is placed in some person or thing. So it's a state of habit or mind when we think about belief. It also, belief is defined as something that is accepted, considered to be true, or held as an opinion, something that is believed. And finally, convictions of the truth of some statement or the reality of some being or phenomenon, especially when based on examination of evidence. So these are three definitions, three vantage points, if you will, in the prism of the world of the word called belief. But there's some key words in these definitions that I want to draw your attention to. One is that belief has to do with trust. Belief also has to do with conviction. It has to do with truth, and it has to do with evidence. And I would ask for you to just kind of hold those four words: trust, conviction, truth, and evidence, as we explore a little bit this idea of belief. And I'd ask you to consider these three questions as we kind of look through our relationship, our spiritual relationship with the idea of belief. So the first question is, what is certain in your life? What's certain for you? What's for sure? Like you don't have any doubt about it. What is certain for you? Who and what do you trust is the second question. Who and what do you trust in your life today? And the third question, what are you convinced of by your knowledge and experience of God? What are you convinced of? Like you pretty much, there's not much that could change what you know of God, divine mind, sacred mystery, however you relate to that force. And I also want to ask you, what is the evidence that your life tells about this experience of the divine? So the first myth that I'd like to explore with you for a minute is this idea that your life is certain. We've come to, at this point, be talking about our life in contrast. Most of our conversations have to do with what life was like before COVID-19 and what's life like now and what might we want life to be like in the future. And we talk about, and I've used this language, we talk about this time of great uncertainty and everything is so uncertain. And I'd like you to just think back to January of this year and what was generally going on for you? Like what was certain? We kind of operate like, life was just fantastic at the beginning of the year, and then COVID happened, and I just want to challenge us to maybe reflect a little bit, like what was generally going on for you in January of this year? Was life full of expectation and joy and anticipation of of what was coming? Or was it a little bit like a laundry list of what needed to be worked on or fixed or updated or changed or transformed in some way? Like what was that experience like? Or where was it on that spectrum of poles? That was life like this overbearing, joyous experience, or was it just life? And there were some things that you might have been certain about and some things you'd like to be certain about. Everything now is this language of uncertainty, and the issues that we find ourselves dealing with have been uncertain for a long time. When we look at food insecurity or racism or global health networks or educational systems, all of these things were uncertain already. We didn't exactly know if we were doing the best job or what there was to do. But I think that what's happened is that maybe what we've accepted or considered to be true or held as an opinion is that someday, one day, all of these things were going to get taken care of somehow. And that what we believed was that it was fine to be certain about that uncertainty, and that somebody was going to kind of swoop in and clean this mess up. But it wasn't so much that we were looking for, where's my broom? Where's my piece to actually clean up? And maybe what is really certain at this time is that we are in the exact perfect place to begin to envision and speak a world that we believe is right and just and peaceful and loving for everyone. But it takes us to actually declare that, to actually say that this is the time, not necessarily maybe of uncertainty, but maybe this is the time of creation. The second myth I want to explore is this idea that you or we only always believe the best and the highest. And I know that this is a little bit of a no-brainer of sorts, because if I'm clear that my beliefs are not always the best and the highest. And I'm actually somewhat glad and grateful that most people can't hear the inner conversations in my head. I know that some of you can, and thank you for your discretion. I appreciate that. You've not shared what mystically has come to you. But sometimes our conversations and sometimes our beliefs are actually rooted in the failure of humanity. There's this assurance that we have that people and circumstances can't or won't improve, or that what would be necessary is beyond comprehension to actually bring about the changes that we would want to see. Trust is actually one of those key words that I mentioned in the definition and when of belief. And when you look at um, what trust actually inquires, what some of the elements of trust are, is that one of the definitions of trust is to hope or expect confidently. To hope or expect confidently, to rely on the truthfulness of something. And I think there's, this really interesting dynamic with the idea of confidently, that so much of our beliefs today, whether they are for the highest and best, we are confident in those convictions, but we're not always confident about what can happen and what our role is in that. And that makes for shaky ground because our beliefs are actually our lifeline to the divine. It's our beliefs are what anchor us. It's the ground on which we stand. Our beliefs really are our faith. Ernest Holmes says in The Science of Mind, we are bound by nothing except belief. So if we want to be responsible about the times that we're in, about the beliefs that we have, about really having beliefs that serve the highest and best, in every moment we have to be mindful of the choice that we're making, of what do we trust? What do we believe? Do we trust and believe in God, divine mind, sacred mystery, or do we believe in what we see and experience in just our five senses? In order for us to actually maintain beliefs that are bigger, deeper, and wider, my request is that you begin to think about in those moments, moment by moment, day by day, what am I choosing to believe? What am I directing energy towards? And what ultimately could be the manifestation of that? The third belief and the third myth that I'd like to explore is this idea that belief alone will carry the day. That all I must do is believe. And it gets back to this idea of what do you know for sure? What are you convinced of? What are you convicted of? Belief, you see, is the foundation of faith, and many times the words are used interchangeably, that when we are talking about belief, we are also talking about faith. In the book of Hebrews, in the sacred text, the 11th chapter and the first verse, tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so, if you will, if we substituted the word belief here, that belief is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And so we are directing powerful energy into things that we hope for, that we are confident can be, without any evidence that it can actually happen. We're calling for understanding, calling forth love, calling forth reconciliation, calling forth peace, calling forth you get to say. But we're calling it forth not because we have evidence of it, but actually because we just know it to be so. We know it to be the best and the highest. We can believe in far more than we can actually see. We can believe in far more than we've actually experienced. And our experiences with the divine provide that evidence and that foundation that it's worth believing and it's worth having faith, because we've seen the evidence of that in our own lives, and we've seen the evidence of that in the lives of other people. But your actions have to be in alignment with what you believe. Because if you say that you believe that everyone should have food security, but you don't take actions consistent with that, the universe is responsive. She answers what you do. And when you shift your focus, when your beliefs become erratic, then that is the result that gets produced. There's a quote that was shared through One Spirit sends out daily meditations, and this was the one for today, which I didn't see until about 8 o'clock this morning. Can one be passionate about the just, the ideal, the sublime, and the holy, and yet commit no labor in its cause? I'll read that again. Can one be passionate about the just, the ideal, the sublime, and the holy, and yet commit no labor in its cause? I don't think so. Be ignited or be gone. That is a quote from Mary Oliver from her collection of poems, What I've Learned So Far. That which you believe and have faith in for your own life, take action on. Take the actions that are consistent with the beliefs that you have. Let your life's evidence be the foundation of what you believe. And let your deeds actually be expressions of your words and of your beliefs. And finally, I say to you, treasure the uncertainty of each day and be certain that your belief in God, your belief in the divine mind, your belief in the great mystery is unwavering and it is complete. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be with you.